Yeah, so today's Bible reading will be from Psalm 49. Yeah. Okay, let's start. To the leaders of the Korhites, Psalm. Hear this, all you peoples. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak wisdom, the meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will solve my riddle to the music of the harp. Why should I fear in times of trouble, when the iniquity of my persecutors surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of the abundance of their riches? Truly, no ransom avails for one's life. There's no price one can give to God for it. For the ransom of life is costly and can never suffice. That one should live on forever and never see the grave. When we look at the wise, they die. Fool and dull perish together and leave their wealth to others. The graves are their homes forever, the dwelling places to all generations. Fruit they name their lands their own. Mortals cannot abide in their pomps. They are like animals that perish. Such is the fate of the foolhardy, the end of those who are pleased with their lot. Salah. Like sheep, they are appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd. Straight to the grave they descend, and their forms shall waste away. Sheol shall be their home. But God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. Salah. Do not be afraid when some become rich, when the wealth of their house increases. For when they die, they will carry nothing away. Their wealth will not go down after them. Though in their lifetime they count themselves happy, for you are praised when you do well for yourself. They will go to the company of their ancestors, who will never again see the light. Mortals cannot abide in their palms. They are like the animals that perish.
Great. It's great to be with you. My name's Rob, and I'm part of the staff team that works together with the Christian Union. And it's great to be able to talk to you today from the Psalms, from Psalm 49. On the weekend, we had a changeover conference where our new leaders, the newly elected leaders, came in, and some of the leaders who were finishing up were also there. And one of the leaders who was finishing up said that the year had just flown by. That 1 year of leadership had just come and gone so quickly. And I thought that this is an experience that you guys are going to have more and more from now on. And this is just one of the terrible things about life, is that you know, in your younger years, you just can't wait to get older, and time just drags and drags, and I can't wait to be 16, and I can't wait to be 18, and I can't wait to finish school, all this stuff. And then when you finally get here, suddenly life just accelerates and starts to fly by. The years fly by. Like, as someone has said, sands through the hourglass. And this is just really unfair and disconcerting. When I was a kid, I used to get taken to a regular appointment at a building in Sydney. It was one of the very first office towers built in Sydney. And in the foyer, which was a fairly grand sort of foyer, underneath the lifts, over the top of the lifts, there was a clock, large clock, and then above it the words, "Time conquers all." Time conquers all. And I used to see this, once a year, and it stuck in my mind. And I used to think about it. Is that true? Is that true? And I used to think, and if it is true, that means that that's true for me as well. Time is going to overcome me in the end as well. And what must it be like for people going to work there every day? Do they go, I might as well give up, I might as well not work today, there's no point in me doing this if time is going to overcome my life in this way? This is a song that offers us wisdom for this situation, that we discover that we are mortal, that we're on limited time, that our time flies by, and that our lives will come to an end. We are finite, we are mortal, and this song recognises that. and talks about. In this series, we're looking at the book of the Psalms. We're looking at various Psalms. And it's just interesting to notice that there is this collection in the Bible of songs, of song lyrics. 150 songs that have been gradually collected over time. And many of the songs are someone's own individual story, like this one. It's I do this and me and my. It's one individual wrote this song, but then the song comes to be included in the songbook. Other people like the song. Other people think this song is a good song, and it gradually gets included in the songs of the people of Israel and included in the Bible. Some of the songs are directed towards God, they're prayers. Other songs like this one are about God and about the person's interaction with God and thinking about God and various issues and events in their life. But overall, what they kind of do is they give us a way of thinking and talking, give us language with which to assess and express our experience. One of the reasons that songs catch on, especially lyrics, is because they say something that we ourselves feel but didn't quite have the words for. That the song actually in some way shapes our experience, helps us to think about our experience, gives us the words that we need for talking about our experience. And so when it comes to the Psalms, what's going on here is that we're being given language to talk about God, and also language that we can use to talk to God. That sometimes what we're hearing is someone talking about God, and so we get to overhear that. Sometimes we get to overhear someone talking to God, but either way, it's really giving us language to think about our lives in relation to God. So if you're someone who's not a Christian person, in some ways, what you get here is just a chance to overhear what it would be like to be a God person, to be a person that has God in your life in this way. If you are someone who regards yourself as a Christian, then it kind of helps fill out your thinking, your way of talking about God and talking to God. One of the strange and exciting things about the Psalms is it gives us permission to talk to God and about God in ways that you might not have thought were okay. So, for example, there's language here about how to complain to God when you want to complain. And we're going to see various kinds of ways of talking to God over these weeks. So here, it's really a song. It's about fear, it's about wealth, and it's about death. So let's have a look at this song together. First of all, the songwriter actually says this is a song that you should pay attention to. Spends the whole first verse trying to get you to listen. Hear this, all you peoples, give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. So no matter who you are, this is a song for you. My mouth shall speak wisdom, the meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb, I will solve my riddle to the music of the harp. You're going to get some wisdom from this song. It's worth paying attention to, and it's going to kind of be proverbial wisdom. And it's going to help you solve a riddle. It's going to help you sort through a problem as you listen to the song. And here is the problem, here is the issue. Verse 5, why should I fear in times of trouble when the iniquity of my persecutors surrounds me, those who trust in their wealth and boast in the abundance of their riches? He raised the question, why should he fear? And the implication is he doesn't fear. He doesn't fear the people who are persecuting him, and he doesn't fear them even though they are rich. In other words, he's saying something that most people in the ancient world would have found stupid. Because one of the things that everyone knew was that you should be afraid of rich people who persecute you. Because it's just been the normal situation in human history, in human life, that wealthy and powerful people exploit poor and powerless people. That this is part of why they are rich and why they get richer. And we're very fortunate in our situation here in Australia, where we have the rule of law, that pretty much works most of the time, and where we have a situation where we have economic growth, which means it's possible to get rich without necessarily exploiting other people. In the ancient world, where most of the time you had zero economic growth, the only way to really get rich is at someone else's expense. And so wealthy people use their wealth and power to exploit and oppress poor people. It was just normal, it was just expected, it was a regular human experience. You should fear the rich. You should fear the rich because they may very well be out to get you. They'll certainly treat you badly and exploit you any way that they can. So if that was normal, why is this person saying, actually, why should I? I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of them. Well, why? I'd like you to talk to the person next to you and just read the next couple of verses. Verses 7, 8 and 9. Why does he say he's not afraid? Just take a few minutes to read that and talk to the person next to you. Thanks for doing that. What did you find? Why does he say he's not afraid of rich persecutors?
Because when push comes to shove, it's in a time of crisis, their wealth is useless. Can't save them from death.
Their wealth can't save them. Yeah, so what's he saying? Why isn't he afraid of them?
Both he and them are going to die anyway.
That they're going to die. They're going to die. But aren't they rich?
You can't pay for eternal life.
Doesn't matter how rich they are, they can't buy their life. Can't spend enough so that you don't die, so that you avoid the grave. Yeah, now I think this is very surprising, don't you? And this is not the usual way we think about mortality, because usually it's about me. And insofar as we think about it in relation to God, it's like, God, why do I have to die? Why am I mortal? It's not right. It's not fair. It's an evil. And that's true, I think. But he says, in some ways, mortality is a good thing. And you know why? Because evil people die. And it stops their evil. It stops them from perpetuating the evil that they do. So I don't know if you ever kind of say, thanks God for the mortality sort of thing. That actually, there's some wisdom in it. And the Bible kind of sees it as a judgment of God which prevents the spread of human evil. Prevents human evil getting as bad as it could. When you think about it, there have been some monstrous people in human history, and some of them might still be doing what they were doing if they lived forever. Joseph Stalin might still be in charge of the Soviet Union if he was immortal. Or Chairman Mao might still be in charge of China after all these years. And it would be a different world if it wasn't for mortality. So he actually says he's not afraid of them, that the whole situation is temporary because those people are going to die. And it doesn't matter how rich they are, it's still the case. In fact, and he now starts to broaden it out, this is the fate of everyone. This is the fate of everyone. When we look at the wise, they die. Fool and dolt perish together. Dolt is not a word we use very often, but now that you've heard it, you can use it. To your friends do something stupid, don't be a dolt. Just try that one out sometime. This is the fate of all people. Whether you live your life well or badly, whether you're smart or stupid, everyone has to die and leave their wealth to others. Doesn't matter how much you accumulate, that this will be the case. And this is people's destiny. Their graves are their homes forever, their dwelling places to all generations, though they named lands their own. So it doesn't matter how much you achieve in your life. You may even say you become so fabulously wealthy that you can buy so much land that you can name a whole suburb, you can name a whole region after yourself. I declare my land's Rob Land. And you've become so great and so powerful, you still You're still mortal, you're still going to die, you still have to leave that to someone else, no matter how much you've achieved, no matter how many things are named after you. And here is the kind of chorus of the song, verse 12. Mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They are like the animals that perish. Pomp is a word that means your glory or the things about you that are impressive, your youth, your vitality, your wealth and power and achievement. These are our pomp. And you can't keep living in that forever. You can't continue in that. That eventually you'll die. And here he really just points out how bad it is. It's just the same fate as animals. That your future is the same as that goldfish that you buried in the backyard when you were 6 years old. That we're all headed into that. To what he calls the grave or Sheol, the place of the dead. And he goes on to talk about the way in which human beings live their life, oblivious to this fact, apparently. Such is the fate of the foolhardy, the end of those who are pleased with their lot. Like sheep, they're appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd. Straight to the grave they descend, and their form shall waste away. Sheol shall be their home. And this is a really kind of scary picture in some ways. And the Bible uses the image of sheep and shepherd in a very positive way most of the time. That God is like our shepherd, and I think Amy alluded to the song Psalms 23, which talks about this. God is like a shepherd to his people and takes care of them. But here the image is just used in a completely different way, that death is like a shepherd. And death is kind of shepherding the people of this world along, and they're like sheep just following along to the grave, to Sheol, the place of the dead. And the most compliant sheep, the most cooperative sheep, are the sheep who are happy with their lives. Those who are pleased with their lot. But the shepherd is taking them to the grave. It's a kind of creepy image of human beings headed towards this destination and just going along with it. Maybe even just ignoring the fact. And so he'll go on to say that, return to that question, but he'll put it in general terms. In verse 5 he said, why should I fear? And then verse 16 he says, don't be afraid. He says to us, don't be afraid when some become rich, when the wealth of their houses increases. For when they die, they will carry nothing away. Their wealth will not go down after them. They can't take it with them, so don't worry about it when people get rich. Don't worry about it when that gives them the power to exploit you. Though in their lifetime they count themselves happy, for you are praised when you do well for yourself, they will go down to the company of their ancestors, who will never again see the light. And again the chorus, mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They're like the animals that perish. The thing that especially stops people from thinking about their mortality is their happiness. That the danger about being wealthy is this, that you are happy, and therefore you don't worry about death. You don't think about it. People find happiness through wealth, and also other people tell them that they're happy. Oh, you're so wealthy, you must be happy. That's what it means there, for you are praised when you do well for yourself. Gee, you've really made a lot of your life. Gee, you've done so well in your career. Look at your home, look at your house, look at your investments. You really have done a great job in your life. And that kind of praise and encouragement actually distracts people from the real issue, that is, that they're still going to die. That they're still going to die. And so actually happiness is a danger here, a spiritual danger. It's really interesting that the Bible doesn't say money won't make you happy. The Bible may raise the issue that, wealth may not give you ultimate satisfaction. There's that kind of doubt there in the book of Ecclesiastes. But the Bible never says anything as sentimental and silly as money won't make you happy. Could make you pretty happy. There's a lot of good stuff out there that you could enjoy if you had a lot of money. And surely this thought has crossed your mind. Surely. There really is a lot of good stuff out there. And money give you access to lots of the things that we love in life. So the Bible's not stupid to say that wealth won't make you happy. What it does say is this, that wealth could easily distract you from the fact that you are mortal. And while you're accumulating wealth for yourself and enjoying it, you may well ignore the fact that you too, like everyone else, is going to die. And that is spiritually dangerous. That wealth may actually stop you from recognising the most crucial root fact of your life, which is that you are mortal. That you and I are going to die. And that we have to actually confront that. But did you notice one thing in the song that I skipped over? And it's the extraordinary thing that the psalmist says. He says that everyone, wise and foolish, high and low, everyone is going to die. But verse 15, but God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, and he will receive me. Not only is the psalmist not afraid of the wealthy persecutors, he's not afraid of death either. And the reason is because he has faith that God is going to ransom his life or his soul from the power of death, from the power of the place of the dead. And he doesn't actually say why. It's just an assurance that knowing God as he does, he really believes that for him death will not be the end. It's not just that he believes, that in some way he'll live on, because that's already what he believes about everyone, that death is not final in a sense, but that the only real hope that people have, the only real prospect that they have is that they'll go on spiritually in some way, but they'll just be in this place of the dead, whatever it means. It's no real hope there. But he thinks that God will ransom him. That God will ransom him. And the image here is of a payment being made to set someone free. Like the ransom being paid to set a captive free. That God is going to do that for him so that he won't be in the grave forever. He won't be dead in this way forever. How can he say that? Where does this assurance come from? It's really hard to know for sure. I think that we can speculate that this person who wrote this song knows something about God already from the story of Israel. Knows that God is a rescuer. That God rescued the people of Israel out of their slavery in the land of Egypt. That God continued to preserve the people of Israel through their history. That God has been a redeemer and a rescuer of them. And so there's this faith looking forward to death that yes, God can be a rescuer from that as well. That same faithful God can rescue even from death. Well, we don't know exactly why the psalm writer said that. But as the story of the Bible goes on, we discover that God really has paid a ransom for us. A ransom that does save us from death. And that Jesus himself understood himself to be that ransom. That Jesus said that he was God's way of giving a ransom for us. Listen to these words of Jesus speaking about himself from Mark chapter 10, verse 45. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is God's way of ransoming us from death. We all have to die, but Jesus is God's way of giving us life beyond death. I wonder if you have ever heard stories of people being ransomed and what kind of amounts people have paid to ransom people. Have you ever heard the story? This is a true story about King Richard I of England, who went to the Crusades, and on his way home from the Crusades, he decided to come back overland. The King of Austria imprisoned him and demanded a ransom. This is a classic piece of opportunism. Here's a king, I could lock him up and I could ask for a ransom, so he did. And the King of Austria asked for a ransom from England of 150,000 gold marks. In today's money, $4 billion. And so the people of England had to come up with $4 billion in order to pay the ransom. And I must say, I would have been tempted if I was one of them to say, you can have him, you can keep him, he's a good king, but, we've got King John, he'll be just as good. No, they raised the money, and it was just the whole country contributed to this. And I know this. I was watching this documentary about a cathedral in England. I don't know why. I got caught watching this documentary, and in the documentary, someone from the cathedral brought out the special plates and cups that they use for communion, for remembering Jesus' death. And they said, okay, so we've got this from the 15th century, and this from the 14th century, and this from the 13th century, and they're really old. And they said, but there's nothing from before that, even though the cathedral is much older. Oh, the person said, oh, why is that? And the person said, well, because it was all melted down to pay the ransom for King Richard. In England, there is no gold plate or cup older than, what year was it? 1194. Everything. They just took everything in that to pay one person's ransom. All the gold plate in the kingdom. That was commitment to get him back. In 1973, the grandson of the richest man in the world was kidnapped. John Paul Getty was the richest man in the world in 1973, and his grandson, John Paul Getty III, was kidnapped by the mafia in Rome. And a ransom demand of $17 million was made. They wanted $17 million. Getty's fortune was in the billions. He refused to pay his grandson's ransom. Even when eventually they reduced the amount to $3 million, he would not pay. Finally, people prevailed on him and he gave his son $2 million and lent him a further $1 million in order to pay the ransom. The $1 million loan was at 4% interest. He wouldn't even pay after the mafia sent one of the grandson's ears in the mail demanding the ransom be paid. You get the impression that this was not a very generous person, that there was a very great reluctance to part with any of the wealth. All right, well, what is God's ransom like when it comes to us? Is it more like King Richard or John Paul Getty? Well, it's on the King Richard side of things, and even actually much more. That God gives his own son, Jesus, to be our ransom. And that by this ransom, God purchases our lives, purchases our souls, so that we should not see decay, so that we should not just be in the grave forever, but that we can have life. And Jesus died on the cross and then rose again, so that we are able to be with God forever, and so that we are able to be given new life, raised from death, just as Jesus himself was raised from death. The thing is, all human beings go to Sheol, right? We all go to the grave. But Jesus went to the grave, but he kind of burst out the other side. He's the Sheol destroyer, the Sheol beater. He's the one who has actually come through that experience and now lives forever. There's one human being who has been to Sheol and is now alive forever. And through trusting in him and the ransom that he paid, we also can have that hope of living forever. So the person who wrote the song had faith that God would rescue them, ransom them from the power of Sheol. But maybe didn't really know how it was going to be. But now we can see how. That it's through Jesus. At great cost, Jesus has paid the ransom for us. Okay, so how does this song help us to learn to talk to God and talk about God? Well, first of all, I hope you can see that this is a song that actually helps us to talk to God about death. Encourages us to recognise our own mortality and to be able to talk about it. And of course, one of the weird things about our world and our society is that death is a taboo. That most of the time we're not meant to talk about it, and we're not meant to recognise our own mortality. But actually it's healthy. It's healthy for us to realise that we're mortal, healthy for us to be able to talk about death, healthy for us to be able to talk to God about it as well. One of the things about these psalms, of course, is it just lets us know that it's okay to talk to God about stuff that he already knows, because there's nothing else to talk about. Right? He knows it all, but he still wants us to talk to him about it. And you can talk to him about your mortality. You can talk about how you feel about it. You can talk about your fear about it. You can talk about whether you trust God about it, or how you want to trust God about that he has paid your ransom. It would be really good to have that kind of conversation with God. It would be really good to have that kind of conversation with each other as well, to just be able to talk about it and acknowledge, oh yes, I realise I am mortal. Or yes, this really reminded me about my mortality. And this is, I just think actually it's part of growing up as a Christian. And it's usually said that, people who are 18 years old feel immortal. You may still feel immortal, but in the next few years you're going to start to feel mortal. It's amazing how early the first signs of ageing hit. And actually, as you experience those things, good to talk to God about it. Don't hide it, don't suppress it. Just be open about the fact that you are mortal. Talk to God. And I think learn to put your trust in God, to express your trust as you are able to do that God is able to ransom you from death. Last year at our national training event in Canberra, I took some time out and I went to the National Museum, and they had an exhibition called Rome, City and Empire. I thought, oh, that sounded good. So I went in there, paid my money, and it was an exhibition of various articles from ancient Roman, or the Roman Empire. And there were all kinds of sculptures and artworks and various kinds of ornaments and all kinds of stuff. One of the things that it did was just trace through the story of Rome, and in particular the difference that it made when the Roman Empire became more Christian. So you had a very pagan part of the exhibition, and then the end was more stuff from the Christian era. And right near the end from the Christian era was a sort of grave marker. It was a Christian memorial gravestone, and it had just a very simple message on it. It said, "Memorial of Theodorus, servant of God, son of Demetrios of Kinopolis, unmarried, who died aged 22, of good cheer." Couldn't believe it when I was reading this. It was amazing. Here is someone described very simply as a servant of God. He's a servant of God before he's anyone's son or daughter, or anyone's son. He's unmarried and he dies very young, aged 22. It's a disaster from the point of view of pagan Rome. A man who is not leaving behind him any posterity, no children. But he's a servant of God, dies age 22, of good cheer. Of good cheer. Full of hope and joy and confidence, apparently, because he is one of God's people. And that's the kind of confidence that I hope that you'll be able to learn to express to God about your mortality. Secondly, I think it's great to talk to God and to other people about wealth. About wealth. This issue of wealth. How do you feel when you see other people becoming wealthy? We may not be oppressed by wealthy people necessarily, but nevertheless, we still feel it when we see the wealth around us. And it's a temptation to us to be anxious. I need to get wealthy like them. Or what if I miss out on the things that they've got? And I think also really good to talk to God about that, about how you're feeling about that. Because if you're going to be someone who follows Jesus in your life, then it does mean not putting the same priority on wealth. It means being able to give your wealth away. It means lots of things to do with the way you treat money and possessions. And that sometimes you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that, oh, I could keep this for myself. Or I could strive for more for myself. And it would be really good to be able to talk to God about that. And to be able to say when you're feeling that it's difficult. And when you tell God when you're feeling like you want to keep stuff. And tell God when you're feeling greedy. And actually learn to have a dialogue with God about becoming more generous. Less preoccupied with wealth the way the people of this world are. More contented with what you have. So that you're not being distracted by wealth and possessions and the things that people go after in this world. This is very important at university because people here are seized by a kind of madness, a kind of short-sightedness that they want to become wealthy, and this is the chance. University degree is the way to ensure your future. It's a kind of madness because of course it can't. 100% of university degree holders still die. So don't be deceived by that. In this environment we need to keep learning to say to God and to each other, wealth is not that important. Wealth is not that important. What really is important is that God has paid our ransom for us. I might pray, and we've got some time for questions, I think. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for paying our ransom. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for the hope that we have of life beyond death. Thank you for the hope that we have of being with you forever. Please help us to get better and better at talking to you and each other about death and about wealth. Please help us to find the words to say. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.